Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. We've got you covered. Traditional leagues, dynasty leagues, PPR leagues, IDP League, even Daily Fantasy Football League. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
What is going on, y'all? This is the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. My name is Austin, and I am your host all the time, Monday through Friday, usually going live at 7 p.m. Mountain Time. Had a bit of technical difficulty, so we're recording the show a little later here. But if you guys are tuned in, I thank you guys for definitely tuning in. Guys, we are 9 days into the NFL season, and my boy Leonard Fournette, Playoff Lenny, has still not been assigned to an NFL roster, which is absolutely crazy to me. If you're not following the challenge, if by week 5 Leonard Fournette is not signed, he doesn't have a roster that he's on, I got to buy his jersey, and I got to burn it. That's the current challenge that I was given, just because I believe in Playoff Lenny so much. So definitely keep track of that. Guys, make sure you're liking and subscribing, interacting with the channel. It always helps for some young podcast hosts in the game. Also, check out our Patreon, too. Always posting some extra segments. Usually like to go over, my rookies, just a little extra topics that need some extra attention. You only get that exclusive content on our Patreon, so make sure you're checking out the Patreon for sure. Definitely appreciate you guys for doing that. Got a banger for y'all today. Glad that we can come to you, and we didn't have to not do the episode on Friday. Got everything figured out, so let's get right into it with my over/under rated players. Gonna get this off the screen. Week 2 preview is out. That will be our last segment that we do, so make sure you stay tuned for that. If you're watching right now, I definitely appreciate y'all. Can I get my camera up? Just loads of technical difficulties happening, and I'm back. Okay, cool. Let's go immediately with my over/under rated players, if we can, and I'm going to start with Mr. Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley, absolute dog, the quad father. We all know him as one of the most explosive running backs to ever touch an NFL field, and he is going up against a pretty weak Cardinals defense this coming week. Last week, put up 9.3 fantasy points in an absolute blowout, 40-0 spanking that they were given by the Dallas Cowboys. Still picked up 15 touches in this terrible week where, I'm sure they didn't want Saquon to get injured or anything like that. So definitely tough week for him. I expect him to have a way better week this week in week 2. It's unfortunate because the defense is really able to just lock in on Saquon just because of the lack of weapons that they have at the wide receiver position. I'm going to read off to y'all the current wide receiver depth chart for the New York Giants. So at numero uno, number 1 wide receiver for them, Isaiah Hodgins. He's going to be their number 1, the featured guy, which is definitely unfortunate for them. Next guy, Paris Campbell, who's, been a perennial wide receiver 3 his entire career. A lot of speed, good athlete, but not a proven receiver by any means. Their number 3 is going to be Darius Slayton, who's shown improved a bit of upside for the Giants wide receivers, but not much. And then the guy who is most proven, who they currently have listed at their 4th string, who is Sterling Shepard. I would consider these guys all non-threats in the league, unfortunately. And their wide receiver 1 just pretty much either has to be Saquon or Darren Waller being their wide receiver 1 at tight end. They do have a great matchup this week, and I am considering Saquon to be an underrated player currently. PFF has him ranked as their number 2 running back at the moment, going up against a defense that's hurt. Bottom tier defense. They're also a rebuilding team, so it's not like they're really just going out there trying their hardest to win games. I actually saw a very funny clip from their coach where he was like saying, I need killers. I need absolute killers out here. And everybody was looking at him with like the sideways look, like nobody wanted to be in the Cardinals locker room at any time. The weird thing about them is they literally just grabbed Josh Dobbs out of nowhere. I don't know in what world Josh Dobbs just becomes a starter after being a third string for a lot of the time. And I'm sure he doesn't know the entire offense yet because he was literally just brought in. So the defense of the New York Giants should definitely, keep the Giants' offense on the field. Hopefully they can put up some points. Danny Dimes getting paid millions upon millions of dollars to do something. So if he can't do it against the Cardinals, I don't know what team he's going to be able to do it against. But I'm definitely high on Saquon Barkley this week, and I think he's been an underrated guy, this far preseason up until week 1 of the season. Gonna stick with the Giants here for my next guy, and we're gonna go with Mr. Darren Waller. Kind of looks like a hammerhead shark in my opinion. Hasn't really shown too much from a fantasy perspective. Week 1, 3 receptions, 36 yards on 5 targets. It was also reported this week that he has a hamstring injury that's happening currently that he's dealing with. So that's definitely not, great for fantasy managers who were so confident in Darren Waller. Spent their 5th round pick. They were like, I got a steal in Darren Waller. And, it seems like everybody's saying the last couple of years that Darren Waller is a steal, and he's not shown improving yet. Since 2020, his 2020 season was very impressive. 107 receptions, 1,196 yards, and 9 touchdowns. To me, in week 1, when they got spanked by 40, didn't put up one singular point. He really showed me that he just can't get down with those A-side players in the league, the Micah Parsons, the Leighton Vander Esch's of the world. Those really good linebackers and those really good safeties are giving him trouble apparently. And, going into his age 31 season, the time is now. If he ever wants to have a legacy in the NFL, he's got to do it right now. He's given the opportunity, and he definitely didn't do it in week 1. I think he's a bit of an overrated guy at the moment. However, this week, should have a pretty decent matchup. The Giants don't have any talent at all in their wide receiver room. So it's looking like the Giants are going to be relying very heavily on Saquon and Waller to carry the workload for them. Like I said, the Cardinals' defense is very banged up. Probably has a good week too, but I think this guy is overrated at the moment currently. Next guy we're going to is this guy, Debo. Oh, snap. It's the wrong Debo. I think we meant this guy. But they're kind of the same guy. This guy will take your lunch money too. He'd bully you. I remember him bullying Jalen Ramsey real bad on this play. Jalen Ramsey got absolutely broken by Debo Samuel, and he was doing his dance in the end zone. Haven't seen Debo Samuel go too crazy. Didn't see that last year. We didn't really see it in week 1, but, had a promising performance with 5 receptions for 55 yards, grabbing 7 targets, also providing a bit of a rushing upside with 2 carries. We know that he used to get, a ton of carries, maybe like 8 to 10 per game. Hoping to see more touches from him. Kyle Shanahan has reported that Debo is more motivated than ever and reportedly sent him many a shirtless pick over the offseason that they were away from the team. A ton of shirtless picks from Debo Samuel's phone to Kyle Shanahan's phone by way of text message, and the coach said he was loving it. So whatever that means, go crazy. Love to see it, and I hope that means a big fantasy year for Mr. Debo Samuel. Got an excellent advantage this week on his matchup. He'd be going up against the Rams in LA. His primary receiver is going to be primary cornerback that he'll be going up against is Darion Kendrick. Darion Kendrick, rookie coming into the league this year, he was talking a whole lot of mess week 1 against the Seahawks, making a pretty good amount of plays. Seemed like he was out there doing his thing, but I feel like Debo's absolutely going to shut that up this week and put him on the highlight reel probably. PFF has his matchup advantage being at 90% versus Darion Kendrick. So that's definitely interesting to see. I really do expect all the 49ers to eat, though. Everybody on their roster, all the All-Pros, they got Debo, they got Ayuk, they got Kittle, they got Christian McCaffrey. They have a whole bunch of dogs out there, and now it's just time for them to eat. And then, one of the guy who's just been a solid game manager. I don't even know if he's really lost a game except for the game where he broke his hand or whatever happened in the playoffs. Pretty sure Brock Purdy is undefeated in the regular season too, after winning against the Pittsburgh Steelers in just incredible fashion. Mr. Irrelevant just turning into Mr. Relevant. You absolutely love to see it. And I would love to see Deebo Samuel go crazy this week. Think he's an underrated guy in week 2. Next guy I want to talk about a little bit is one Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts, we remember him as the guy who was the 4th pick in the draft, the guy who was supposed to be the guy who changed the tight end position entirely. And I think that hype train is just over now. I think his hype train is completely over, and everybody just kind of sees that and kind of knows that. And, it's just a bit unfortunate to see week 1 went 2 receptions, 44 yards, grabbed 3 targets. This dude was literally the 4th pick in the draft, runs a 4.4. I was so excited for Kyle Pitts coming into the league, and I'm just no longer excited. He's already like a guy who is underrated, and I'm still considering him to be overrated just because he really hasn't done anything. I want to get this graphic up here, and if we see on the left side, this is just one of the many plays that my man's is wide open, chilling on the 35-yard line, ready to make a play, ready to hit a home run that he hasn't hit in so long, and they're just not finding him. Desmond Ridder does not really get down with Kyle Pitts, and he really hasn't shown us much fantasy-wise since that year one. Year 1, he did have a great year, 68 receptions, 1,026 yards, but only 1 touchdown, which is a bit unfortunate. Not a lot of touchdown upside with Kyle Pitts. We expect our tight ends to constantly be carrying us in the touchdown department, and he hasn't been one of those guys either. Year 2, he was a bit injury-ridden, still played 10 games. In those 10 games, only 28 receptions for 356 yards and 2 touchdowns. Kelce does that in like 2 games. If you would tell me that Travis Kelce popped off in 2 games, 28 receptions, 14 receptions a game, 356 yards and 2 touchdowns, like that's not out of the realm of possibility for Kelce to do in 2 games, and this is what this guy got done in 10 games. You absolutely hate to see it. Arthur Smith was kind of asked about the situation, him being their head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, and he was pretty much saying that it was a weird game for them offensively. There's a lot of penalties and stuff, game flow, but he really only mentioned Drake London, that he needs to be getting more involved, but didn't even really mention Pitts, which shows me that he's not really a priority in this offense. It's like if he gets his work, he gets his work, but if he doesn't and they win, they're just still happy with the result of the game, and they're okay with him not being a part of the team. And on the left side, this is actually a tweet from Des Bryant, where Des was just like, Kyle Pitts, he deserves way better than this. He doesn't need to be playing on this team where he's not getting any love, and it's all bad for Kyle Pitts right now, the 4th pick in the draft. Absolute athlete, so we hope to see much better from him coming soon. When I get back, we're going to go to my second segment here. We're going to talk about start-sits for week 2. Talk about some unproven guys that could probably help your team. So we will be right back with it. What is going on, y'all? We are back. I'm not sure if we're experiencing technical difficulties at the moment in regards to the visuals. We've been messing with it, but if this is an audio-only episode, and you guys are still enjoying it, keep tuning in for sure. Just giving my start sits, guys who are fringes for this upcoming week. So let's get right into that with highlighting my first guy on the start sit list, Mr. Anthony Richardson. This guy showed me a lot week one. He showed me a ton week one, actually. Let's just talk about his stats real quick. 24 for 37, 223 yards. Also added the 10 carries for 40 yards and his first NFL touchdown, which I'm sure was very exciting for him. I'm going to have, at least me, I have Justin Fields and Anthony Richardson. I'm leaning towards probably starting Justin Fields, but I got Anthony Richardson right on that start list. He put up, a solid 21 fantasy points last week. Gonna add some rushing upside. He gets to the edge real fast. He's already showing improving. I said the last time, he's kind of like if Kyle Pitts was a quarterback. 4.4 speed, 225 plus pounds. A big bruising guy who's not afraid to put his body on the line. And he actually's got a couple weapons on his team. Josh Downs immediately showed and proved that, coming out of North Carolina, he's going to be someone who is a threat for them. Also have Michael Pittman, who is just the automatic wide receiver one, and he's going to be most likely Anthony Richardson's favorite target too. I really like that combo and that duo on that team. Josh Downs is definitely going to be an unsung hero and could provide some fantasy upside. So watch out for him for sure. Going up against pretty unfortunate Houston Texans team. If y'all don't know, this is actually my team. Really love the Texans, but we're in that rebuilding stage, and that's okay because every team sometimes has got to go through that rebuild. Got to take 2 steps backward to take 1 step forward. Is that the saying? I'm not sure, but Mr. Anthony Richardson's going to be going up against a bottom tier defense in general. In the Texans, bottom tier rushing defense, also a bottom tier pass rush, and they got good but not great coverage. I would expect a nice day from Anthony Richardson in all facets of the game, but mainly in the rushing category. FanDuel did have him projected to go over about 850 yards rushing this season, so those yards are going to have to come from somewhere. I would imagine that these yards are going to come from a bottom tier team in the Houston Texans. I have Anthony Richardson as a definite start if you don't have one of those top 10 quarterbacks in the league. Next guy we're going to touch on here is going to be this guy, the numero uno running back from the Detroit Lions, Mr. David Montgomery. One of only 3 running backs to receive 20-plus carries in week 1. So that's definitely a good sign for him. His stat line, 21 carries, 74 yards, and a touchdown, and only resulted in about 13 fantasy points because he did not touch the ball from a receiving aspect, even though he was often playing some third downs. I guess he was just more of that blocking back for them, while Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be obviously the receiving, elusive, get him in space, get him on the edge, jet sweep type guy. But this is definitely a weird one from a start-sit perspective. But I am of the mindset of any guy who's getting 20 touches a game can go ahead and probably be in my starting lineup. So I'm going to tell you guys to start David Montgomery this week. He runs real hard. He's going to get that goal line work, no question. So he's always going to have the ability to get in the end zone week after week. Also, when the Lions start to get up and start winning the game, in the second half, he's going to be that put away guy that they're going to rely on to get those 3-4 yards and just grind it out. So that's going to be great for anybody that is a fantasy owner of David Montgomery. Gibbs, as I said, will be receiving more workload as the season progresses, but I just think because of the touchdown upside, because of them showing and proving the confidence in David Montgomery with the 20 touches per game, until they show otherwise, he's going to be a guy that I am completely okay with being my running back 2 and starting on my fantasy team personally. Next guy we're going to talk about, pretty explosive elite back, Dalvin Cook's brother here. His name is James Cook, and make sure you know about this guy. He is the numero uno for the Buffalo Bills offense. He's really proven himself as, I guess in week 1, he's really proven himself as a do-it-all back. 12 carries for 46 yards to go along with 4 receptions for 17 yards against a very stout, probably top 2 defense in the league against the Jets. He came out of the game, with not that impressive of, a performance with 10.3 fantasy points, which I will take from my running back too personally. I've seen a lot worse. I think he's showing improving too, that he does have that elite burst to get to the edge and, be a home run hitter for the Bills, and I know that's what they're expecting out of him. Gets to the edge very quickly, and I enjoy watching him. He, has extreme speed, makes a very large difference in the receiving game too. And I think the usage is just absolutely there. And until he shows you that he's not a must-start, he is absolutely a must-start. Damian Harris and Latavius Murray don't seem to get nearly as much work as James Cook. So he's a guy that I'm absolutely starting if he's on my team. You probably get him at a pretty good price from a DFS perspective on Daily Fantasy Sports. So he's absolutely somebody to look out for. My next guy that we're going to be talking about, I want the viewers to kind of guess who. Oh, I guess you can't guess anymore. Sorry, I put the graphic up. I was going to tell you how to guess who had 0 receptions for 0 yards on 1 target in week 1. It was also the 8th pick in the draft. And, I didn't let y'all guess. I spoiled the surprise. It is Drake London. Drake London finished last year on an absolute bang. I'm sure fantasy managers all around the world remember his 333 yards in the last 4 games with Desmond Ridder. He's supposed to be Desmond Ridder's favorite target. Desmond Ridder doesn't really show no love to Kyle Pitts, but he usually shows some love to Drake London and tries to get him the ball. Last week just wasn't it for him. 0 receptions on 0 yards on 1 target for the entire game. Coach Arthur Smith apparently was blaming the game flow and penalties that were happening during the game, but alluded actually to London being a critical part of their offense and saying that, we should all watch the film of how they have usually played and that he should be, getting more buckets in the coming days, in the coming games. Last year, London had a sweet year, his rookie year. 866 yards, 72 receptions, 4 touchdowns, and is also Ritter's favorite target. I, however, am going to advise you guys as your, fantasy advisor, your financial fantasy advisor, to sit Drake London this week. I just want him to see a week where he can get something under his belt. If you guys have another option, maybe don't start Drake London this week. If you don't, that's okay. I get not having any better option, and I don't think you need to reach down too far, grabbing Clyde Edwards-Helaire, like any of these bottom tier running backs. Put at your flex position instead. I understand if you need to start him, but I would advise to sit Drake London this week until he shows you something. But yeah, next guy we're going to talk about, he didn't get a graphic, unfortunately, so we're going to switch back to the one-person view, and that is Dalton Schultz, and I'm telling y'all to start him, actually. Telling y'all to start Dalton Schultz this coming week. Last week he actually ran more routes than any other tight end in week 1, any other tight end at all. So definitely something to note. There's not a lot of options in this Houston Texans offense. Obviously, Nico Collins is going to get his work. He did pretty good last week, but I fully expect Dalton Schultz to be involved more. He obviously had a great year last year with the Dallas Cowboys, and the man was hooping. The man was definitely hooping. He found himself in the end zone multiple times, and currently he's the most proven pass catcher on the Houston Texans roster. Do be advised that he does have a thigh injury currently, but he's expected to play. He was a limited participant in practice this week, at least on Wednesday, and I was looking for reports and couldn't find too many reports on what's going on with him currently. But he is expected to play, and he ran more routes than any other tight end. I'm a believer of the mindset of guys who get opportunities are, eventually they got pan out. They have to pan out at some point. And I think that, C.J. Stroud is going to start relying on his most proven pass catcher, Dalton Schultz, to help him get into a rhythm that we did not see him get into in week 1. When we come back, we are going to be talking about week 2 preview. This is the first week 2 preview. Only going to be talking about, really interesting games that I like. And we're going to start off with Ravens-Bengals when we get back from the break. So thank y'all for tuning in. If you're still tuned in, make sure you're checking out the Patreon. Like and subscribe. Interact with the video. It helps us grow. Young podcasters in the game, just trying to do our thing. But we will be right back. What is good? We are right back with it. Giving you my week 2 preview, just a couple of the games that I really, really like. Don't want to talk too much about the cakey games. Just going to stick with the super, exciting, more, percolating games that are happening this Sunday. And I'm super excited about really all of these. This is one of the more interesting ones for sure, being the Bengals versus the Ravens in Cincinnati, and the Bengals are favored by 3. Over-under sitting at about 46.5. And I think it's always important to just kind of check in with the over-under, see what the books are talking about from a scoring perspective, because that does drive a lot of the fantasy buzz and what's going to happen in the game. The only a certain amount of points are going to be scored. You probably look at the Jets versus the Dallas game where there's 2 elite defenses. That's a game where you would expect things to not be happening as much. Seems here that hopefully things will be happening and we will be seeing some touchdowns get on the board. Let's go through some key injuries for this game, because there definitely are a couple of very, very key injuries that are happening currently. For the Ravens, they got Marlon Humphrey, their cornerback 1, being out for this game, which is a big blow to them. He's their number 1 coverage guy. They expect him to make plays in the receiving game, the backside of the receiving game, the receiving defense game. Seen him make just a million plays, and obviously they're not going to have him this week, so that definitely stings. Chris Evans for the Cincinnati Bengals, who's their running back 2, is going to be out. So expect more workload for Joe Mixon. He's probably going to have the whole team on his back this week. Definitely something to be of note. Andrews is currently questionable with that thigh injury too. Seems like he's going to play, but he has the questionable tag on. So I thought I would let you guys know. And then the 2 biggest injuries that are currently happening are Ronnie Staley and Tyler Lindenbaum. They're the Ravens' left tackle and center, who are both out. So the rushing attack probably not going to be nearly as strong with some backup O-linemen in there. I fear for what that means with the Ravens with no J.K. Dobbins, their starter, going with the committee, and Lamar. So we really shall see. I want to get started, though, on the Bengals side of the ball with Joe Burrow coming off his worst game ever, 82 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. If you tuned in to my last episode, I was talking about this. I'm literally mad that you're going to have your worst game ever. You're not even going to throw a pick. Like, you're not even going to try to go down the field and, risk one, try to win the game. We were only putting up 3 points. Like, if I'm the quarterback, I might just throw it to the other team at that point. Just try to make a play and see what happens. But, that's not what he did. And he even got, taken out during the last drive of the game. I wouldn't have been having that either. But that's just me. That's just because, I'm a dog. But I'm sure Joe Burrow is actually a dog too. And I do expect a bounce-back spot for him here. He is actually 2-0 versus the Ravens at home. One game he actually threw for 525 yards and 4 touchdowns. So I'm hoping to see something of that caliber, that type of game. And I really do love the bounce-back storyline from Joe Burrow. I do expect the Burrow and Chase show to be on, and I expect the script from, last week to be off. Conspiracy theory, that game was scripted, and, he just got paid, and some of that payment was because he needed to throw this game. Jokes are not jokes. All good jokes contain true things. J. Cole actually said that. However, other Bengals I like on the fantasy side of things, T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. T. Higgins posted a fantastic day week 1 of 0 catches on 8 targets, so that was really cool for him. Hopefully he can find a way to not do that ever again. Tyler Boyd, 2 catches for 10 yards week 1, and they should also see some backup DBs just because Marlon Humphrey is not going to be in the game. Everyone's going to get, slid up for the Ravens, and I was looking at their depth chart. They just don't have too many, prominent names in their defensive backfield that I can see stopping guys like, T. Higgins. T. Higgins should be like a top wide receiver 2 in any day, and on this day with backup DBs, I just see him eating really well. I see, Chase eating really well, and I can see Boyd even getting a couple touches too. I don't love Joe Mixon this week, unfortunately, going up against a pretty stout defense. Roquan Smith is back there, got a solid front 4 for the Baltimore Ravens. See this much more as an aerial attack game for the Bengals, but it obviously is to be seen. On the Ravens side of the ball, like I said, guys, 2 of their most talented offensive linemen are just going to be sitting out of this game, not in pads, not blocking for nobody, wasting their size on the sideline. So that's super unfortunate. They also lost their starting running back for the entire season in J.K. Dobbins, and their whole roster really just seems to be, injury prone, whether it be any of the guys I just talked about. Rashad Bateman and Odell have been dealing with constant injuries their entire career. Rashad Bateman with a very short career at this point with multiple injuries. Odell's knee just can't hold up. I personally just don't like investing my time and my money and my tears and my energy into this Ravens offense. I just don't. It's not something that I can personally do. I can't handle the emotional stress that will bring me, so I will put my bets in other places. However, Lamar and Mark Andrews have impressed versus the Bengals, especially the last 2 games. Mark Andrews having a 100-yard plus touchdown performance last game, and the game before that went for 80+ in the touchdown. Very impressive games. It seems like he's pretty dominant against them. These are divisional games where there's so much familiarity. It's always just a bit weird just because they play each other so much. So you really don't know what to expect. These games you usually want to expect a couple more points just because they've played this. The offense has played the defense multiple more times. Lamar Jackson is 2-3 against the Bengals in the Joe Burrow era. And the Bengals are just going to have a middle-of-the-pack defense. If week 1 improves any of what they're made of, I do expect a large rushing attack from the committee plus Lamar. Going over the committee of Justice Hill and Gus Edwards, 8 carries for 9 yards and 2 touchdowns from Justice Hill. So, I feel like a lot of people who went to go just swoop him up on the waiver wire are expecting a big day. This guy had 9 yards. This guy had 9 yards last week. So don't expect anything too crazy from him. I think the lead back is Gus Edwards, who also had 8 carries but was able to grind out 32 yards, so significantly more than his counterpart. The most interesting thing from these two guys is that there were no receptions for either of them and no targets from either of them either. So it doesn't look like Lamar is really trying to check down to his running backs too often. Like I said, this is one of the most run-heavy teams in the entire league, so they will be pounding the rock constantly. One guy I do like in their receiving game, and this one's obvious, I'm sure everybody is liking him currently, is Zay Flowers. I think he's an immediate wide receiver 2, immediate starter. His first game, he received 10 targets and caught the ball 9 times. So that's absolutely a good sign for this Ravens offense. He looked like one of the twitchiest, most explosive players I've seen in a while too, especially in his first game. Wasn't able to get into the end zone, but this is a guy who had 12 touchdowns in his senior year of college, so I expect some touchdowns to be coming on the board very, very soon. Definitely feeling for guys like Odell and Rashad currently. Didn't have big week ones by any means, and have been just bedridden with the injury bug. Excited to see if they can ever give us anything ever again. Hope to see a Odell legacy story this season. The Odell 30 for 30 is going to come out, and they're going to talk about this 2023 season. Maybe, probably, maybe. It's definitely sitting at a maybe currently. But like I said, Mark Andrews does eat against the Bengals, so I expect him to be eating again and, just getting his lunch money, stealing his lunch money from this Bengals secondary and linebacking core. Gonna get to my notes here. This is still gonna be in the segment 3, and I'm gonna talk about the game that I'm actually most excited about with my cover athlete right here. I feel like all videos with Patrick Mahomes on the cover get way more clicks and way more attention. So I love me some Patrick Mahomes, man. And this week he's going down to Jacksonville to play against Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Should be an absolute shootout is what I'm predicting. I definitely see a crazy game from both offenses, plus Travis Kelce making his first appearance in the league. Wrote this little note down I thought was fun. I think the NFL is like a real life anime TV show, and Pat Mahomes is the main character. He's Goku, he's Naruto, he's Saitama from One Punch Man. It's just him versus the world, and he just keeps getting it done, man. Trevor Lawrence on the other side, he's also kind of like, one of these main characters that you got to talk about every single week. I would give his anime comp, his comparison to like a Trunks from Dragon Ball Z. Trunks from Dragon Ball Z had really long hair, just like Trevor Lawrence, and he kind of looks like him. So I'm just gonna ride with that. This is actually my game of the week. This will be my game of the week, the one that I'm most excited to see. And I also see this being like a future AFC playoff matchup that could absolutely happen. At some point in these guys' careers. These offenses are explosive. There's a lot of firepower both ways, and I'm just can't wait to just sit down on my couch for multiple hours and just watch this thing play out. That's how I feel. From a Jaguars perspective, their offense is looking gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. Love what the Jaguars are doing currently. Got an elite young running back or elite young quarterback. Also have an elite running back, but want to stick with Trevor Lawrence right now. Love his fantasy production that he provides. He is the type of guy that can go for the 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. He can also take off a little bit too and grab those 15, 16, 20-yard runs when they're manned up and everybody's back is turned. He's the type of guy who will actually put his body on the line and go get that first down for y'all. And for y'all's fantasy team, most importantly, elite running back and Travis Etienne had a beautiful week 1, 18 carries, 77 yards and the touchdown. Also added in 5 catches for 27 yards, which is just beautiful to see. You know me, guys. I'm talking about 20-touch guys. My guy gets 20 touches per game, and your guy probably doesn't. More opportunities lead to more fantasy points, and that's just how it go. That is just how it go. They also added a elite wide receiver in Calvin Ridley coming off the gambling suspension, I think is what we're classifying that as, the gambling suspension that a lot of these players are going to start getting, unfortunately. But Mans is only 28 years old. We have to, just remember that. Calvin Ridley is in the prime of his entire life, and he definitely doesn't want to go down as just one of these guys who is just a good receiver. It seems like he's ready to continue his legacy, and he really put the league